Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest. We have my man, Dart Adams, an author, a journalist, a hip-hop historian, a fact-checker. He's the living, breathing definition of a hip-hop aficionado. The man is Neil Degrassi Tyson of hip-hop and a Bostonian to the fullest. Welcome, Dart Adams.
Thanks for having me.
Dart, there is a lot I want to talk about. This is a show that has been in the making for quite some time. We've done many different regions, but Boston is something that we felt deserved a spotlight. It's a city that, much like Philadelphia, doesn't quite get its due because of obviously places like LA and New York. But I thought, who better to discuss the history of Boston hip hop than with you, Dart? So thanks for stopping by. Where do we start? How about this? Before we even get into Boston, I want to talk about something that you and I had a discussion about maybe a month ago. I thought that my NWA Straight Outta Compton tape was purchased in the summer of '88. I die on that hill. I said it was '88 because I remember '89 was 3 Feet High and Rising, Get a Grip, Ghetto Boys, Walking with a Panther, No One Could Do It Better, DOC. But you corrected me and you brought receipts. So for those, and I got to think there are so many people that are like me who thought it was '88. For those that believe it's '88, for those that think they have a record that says '88, whether it's printed on the very bottom in the liner notes, explain to people why this album came out in 1989.
Okay, first of all, this weird thing happened with NWA and the Posse, where it's released on Macola in '87 and then released again in 1988. It's released again right at the summer 1988.
So you're talking about the Dope Man 12-inch that came out, the original.
Well, see, that too. The Dope Man 12-inch also came out. But when you look at NWA and the Posse, the original time it was released was '87, and then it was released again in '88. And then that's when, the popularity of NWA, that's when people started buying it. So it enters the Billboard Black Music charts in 1988, summer '88, right? But what also happens is NWA releases a maxi single. So you're looking at Gangsta Gangsta.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
Quiet on the Set. And so that starts blowing up, and people start writing about that in October and November 1988. And what happens in November 1988 is they release Eazy-E's Easy Does It. So these things are all out at the same time. And people have it in their head that Straight Outta Compton was released 6 months ahead than it was. But it's just a false memory. But also what happens is when the first things are being released, because it ships February 10th, 1989. But when it's first shipped, there are 4 or 5 songs that were already released in 1988 when the album comes out. So when you see the trademark year, you're going to see 1988. But what people need to realize is that for a lot of 1988, Ice Cube was still going to college. Ice Cube had to be called back to NWA to finish Straight Outta Compton before it came out. So it couldn't have been released in summer '88 because Ice Cube wasn't even there to be a part of NWA fully. They had to record the album first.
So this is like a thing that my kids have told me about recently called the Mandela effect. Has anybody heard of those before? So apparently, when you think in your head about the Monopoly guy, you think that he wears a monocle, but then if you go back and look, he really doesn't wear a monocle. So this is the same thing, but with NWA Straight Outta Compton.
That was wonderful, Kevin. I don't know where the fuck that came from. But
That's the most Kevin
I'll
thing
tell you
ever.
this. So unfortunately, I do have vivid memories, and I got to remember that in '89, the Milli Vanilli effect was very, very popular. They bit Paid in Full's, Ashley's Roach Clip. So I remember distinctive '89 vibes was like Milli Vanilli crossover. Eric B was really popping. I do have the original pressing. Now I do remember. That's the fucked up thing about the West Coast. Macola Records, Ruthless Records. There was even different imprints that
Priority.
were Priority
became a distribution.
Yeah, I mean, I have the original vinyl that has like Jerry Heller's phone number on it. So, you know, that it was in 88. And from what I remember distinctly, because 89 was my senior year of high school, I do not remember NWA coming out at the latter stage of me graduating. It was definitely
not late 89. What Dart said is it came out, I believe, in February of 89.
Yes, it started shipping February 10th, 1989.
Yeah.
So
that
actually came out the same week as De La Soul 3 Feet High and Rising.
Right.
De La Soul 3 Feet High and Rising started shipping February 6, 1989. I have that as proof directly from Monica Lynch herself. And then when she went on what's it called? Questlove Supreme.
Yeah.
And she was talking about the album being released on March 3rd, and Questlove cut her off and said, Dart Adams hates when you say the album was released on March 3rd. And she was like, I don't know where he got the release date from. He says it was released on February 6th. And she says, I don't know where he got that release date from. I got it directly from her. It was me, Dante Ross, and Pete Nice. And we were going back and forth. I was like, this album was not released on March 3rd. I have proof. And I was like, yo, Mon, this is Dart Adams. He says the album wasn't released on March 3rd. It was had to be released between January 24th and February whenever. And she was like, well, let me go check. Oh, here's a postcard that says the ship date is February 6th, 1989. And I screenshotted it and I kept it for my records. And I have it. I keep receipts.
Yeah.
Like I am the person who keeps receipts. Like there's bags inside the bags, and I got receipts on top of receipts. I'm back.
What a great setup for this Boston show.
I just want to make sure I understand fully. So, and because if I don't, maybe some of the listeners don't. The reason why it says 88 is obviously it was produced in 88. It was, when I say produced, I mean the record was created, manufactured, and then it shipped, right? Then it shipped in 89, early 89.
Yes.
Now, we've heard a lot of those songs on this, so we immediately associate that to 88. And I think 89, when you talk about Milli Vanilli, Dre, I'm thinking Young MC, Stone Cold Ryman was a big commercial hit. Tone Loc was very big.
Yeah.
So we don't immediately think NWA. But what you're saying, Dart, right, is that we've heard a lot of those songs already in 88. The record did come out early 89.
Our thing drops late 88.
Yeah.
So when we do our 88 tribute show, which we've been talking about forever, you better not have any fucking straight up.
You got to have Gangsta.
No, it has to be on there. And the 12 inches, the Dope Man 12 inch was out before that. So
right, there you go.
It's a gray area, but when you're doing an 88 tribute, you have to have it on it. It's just a part of it. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. Without further ado, let's get into some Boston hip hop. Boston hip hop. Now, none of us are from Boston, so I don't want to be presumptuous and let people know what I believe it to be. But why don't you let us know what Boston was like, at least in the 80s? Because I do know, look, the source literally came out of a dorm room in Harvard. You know, you had stations at MIT, right? The Ghetto, I think, there was a show called The Ghetto. It was like in the early 80s or something like that. Like there was hip hop going on in Boston, even though people may not be that familiar with it until later.
This is the Ghetto. For the most in nighttime jazz, rhythm and blues, check out the Ghetto, 88.1 FM, Sunday through Thursday. 88.1 FM, Sunday through Thursday, after midnight. Hey, y'all check it out. 88.1 FM. It's called the Ghetto. It's gonna take Cambridge and Boston by storm, huh? I'll be there. How about you? Yeah.
So what happened is, New York is 220 miles away from Boston. Okay, so when rap first started coming out, hip hop started coming out from the Bronx into the outer boroughs. The first places where it spread were, of course, New Jersey, then Connecticut, and then parts of Pennsylvania into Philadelphia, and then I've already said Connecticut, so Massachusetts into Boston. So if you were a rapper, a DJ, MC, B-boy, anything of that nature, the places where you could go to ply your trade or where the record pools went or where you could go to perform were those places that I just mentioned. Boston, Massachusetts. So that's why, like, there's an early thing of LL Cool J going to Colby College in Maine and explaining to them, you know, this is what hip hop is. Have you ever seen this before? And that's 85, right? And we were getting rap tapes from our cousin, you know, as soon as late 78, right before the records came out. Now, when the first rap records came out in April and May 1979, we got them in Boston. And we got them in places like, we had a record store called Skippy White's. We have a store that's, it started here, Strawberries. Strawberries was big, you know, in getting like rap stuff. And then over like Spin City and like down in like what was then Dudley Square, now Nubian Square and Roxbury. And then like all these like mom and pops, one stops all along Massachusetts and in Boston, you know, Boston, the South End, Lower Roxbury, Dorchester, Jamaica Plain, Mattapan, you know, where the Black and Latino neighborhoods are centralized. We were getting this vinyl. And also several of the early rap producers were from Boston. We're talking about Arthur Baker, producer of El Rapo, El Clapo, you know, he owned Streetwise Records, you know, he was at Unique Recordings, he's the guy who mentored Molly Mall.
He is the greatest, one of the greatest unforgotten heroes of early hip hop. I mean, this is the guy who basically took electro hip hop and with John Robbie and just completely turned, you know, planet rock on its ass and made everybody, you know, want to listen to hip hop in the household.
But here's the weird part about that. Everybody knows it as electro and electro rap because of how it was framed on the West Coast. We called it Boston funk. Okay, so when you hear stuff like from the Johnson Crew and Arthur Baker, now the Johnson Crew and Arthur Baker were in like 5 different bands with different names and recorded on different labels.
Yeah, they used to be a gospel band back in the day.
At one point, yeah. So they were a band called Glory. They were a band called Ritz. There were another band called North End. Same fucking band on Emergency Records, on Posse Records over here. And also, you have to keep in mind that the Johnsons owned the record label. They had Boston International, but they were also in-house producers for Tommy Boy. Tommy Boy started because he ran into Arthur Baker and he was like, I'm going to put out the records and you're going to produce them.
Yeah.
And Arthur Baker goes and looks at his boys from Boston. And he's like, he gets the Johnson brothers, and he's like, these are my boys. They help me produce stuff because they worked together on an album for TJM, who was Tom Moulton. Tom Moulton was coming out of Boston. He's not originally from here, but he had moved to Boston to do some stuff, and he was working in Boston, and that's how he became the first remixer. And his boy, John Luongo, became the second remixer. So Boston was very instrumental in the movement of disco and also in rap. And so you had Tommy Boy Records, which is pretty much a home of Boston artists. You have, you know, Arthur Baker, and he has Roby with him. But you have the Johnson brothers, who have Johnson Crew, and then they bring in their boys, Planet Patrol, and they put out the first stuff that really like moves outside of, you know, the other stuff that they were doing with like Soul Sonic Force, you know, or like Jazzy Sensation, which was another offshoot of Soul Sonic Force, the Jazzy 5, you know. It was Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation and their offshoots. So all these Boston things are happening. And like at one point, Sugar Hill Records fires everybody and hires the Johnsons to produce stuff, and they do a whole bunch of stuff. The problem is that Sylvia takes the credit for it, and they're like, no. We did that shit. We want our money. So they split from Sylvia. She pays them. They use that money to open up Boston International Studio, which they later used to record New Edition. But so that's early Boston like rap production history. But in terms of like hip-hop, rap, 1979, 80, 81, there's hip-hop all over Boston. There's graffiti, there's the Floor Lords, the B-Boy crew, there's DJs, you know, there's rappers, but more importantly, you know, beatboxing takes off, you know? So Boston had like these world-class beatboxers forever. And then like rapping comes into play later. But yeah, Boston, like early between 1979 and like 1983, Boston was like really big on rap. But outside of Massachusetts and New England, nobody had any clue.
Yeah. At that point, there were only really 3 major hubs in music. It was New York, it was LA, and it was Miami. And they kind of kept that, what we did call electro back then, they kept that kind of movement going. So I'm really glad that you're touching on a lot of the early settlers of early hip hop, being a part of Boston's fabric,
Yeah, I mean, but also like a lot of it had to do with like the radio stations, because Rapper's Delight got played on, the legacy Boston black radio station WILD. The problem with WILD was, and this is going to sound like I'm making the shit up, but it's very true. WILD had a problem where they shared a signal with another station. So when the sun went down, they could no longer broadcast in Boston. I promise you.
Yeah.
WILD ran until the sun went down. And then all the other college radio stations would pick up and go from there. So WILD will play Rappers Delight that plays like maybe Personality Jock, by the Fatback Band, but they didn't have a dedicated rap show, because also it's a traditional black radio station, but also it caters to the people who live in Boston. So you have a diverse community. So they're playing reggae, calypso, soca, like stuff like that, jazz, gospel, so it's playing to the audience. College radio is programmed by and for the young folks. There's our parents' music, and rap was our music. So we relied on WRBB at 104.9 FM at Northeastern University. We relied on WERS 88.9 FM at Emerson College. We relied on WMBR 88.1 at MIT. We relied on WHRB 95.3 FM at Harvard.
1, 2, 3, 4, hit it!
Here at Boston Spice Saturday evening, Soul's Place with yours truly, Wallace T. Here until 11 p.m., bringing you all of Boston's best in progressive music, funk music, and all that other good stuff.
And those were some of where the early rap shows were. And there was a show called The Ghetto that had been around since the late 60s. And in 1979, they started playing rap and stuff like that. But The Ghetto kind of disappeared and fell off. And it was in 1985 where a guy named Magnus Johnstone started a rap show called Lecco's Lemma. And when he started up in like late, maybe November, December 85, by the time we get to January 1986, the entire metro Boston area, all the MCs, all the DJs, all the breakers, all the beatboxers are descending upon MIT's campus to that tiny studio to come and perform live for the people, because he's playing their demos. And that changed everything. That's when the explosion happened.
Just to touch on that, because I'd love to know what you think. So Boston, I think, they're known for their rock, they're known for their pop, they're known for their R&B. I mean, whether it's New Edition, New Kids, Aerosmith, the Cars, the Pixies, what have you. But why do you think it took so long for Boston, given the fact that you just explained that there was a lot of influence, a lot going on in the hip hop community? Why do you feel it took so long for them to get, quote unquote, established in the hip hop world?
Because when people think Boston, they don't think black music. When people think Boston, they don't think black people. When people think Boston, they think that Boston is the antithesis of black culture or blackness. And me, who grew up in South End, Lower Roxbury, I grew up on Mass Ave. Down the street, at the end of my street was the NAACP chapter of Roxbury. This is the same building that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. used to visit. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. from this neighborhood. Martin Luther King used to live in the neighborhood, met Coretta there, and Malcolm X is from Roxbury. I know people say he's from everywhere else. Malcolm X didn't become Malcolm until he moved to Roxbury with his family. That's not me making shit up as a Bostonian. That's just fact. He saw everything that he could be and become from being in Roxbury. That's just fact. There's no denying that. And so I grew up in Boston, and my whole world was black culture, Latino culture, the islands, everything. So for me, Boston was always this diverse place that people think of when they think of New York, they think of Philly, they think of all these other places. That was my existence. But outside of New England, people have no clue, and that's why. Like, people didn't want New Edition to say they were from Boston. They wanted to play it down as much as possible. Any act that got signed to a major, people tell them, don't tell people you're from Boston. We want them to like you. So that's why it didn't work. It was very hard to have a black artist or a black group and have them like come out and just say they're from Boston, because you could be from Philly, you could be from Detroit. All that screams black. But Donna Summer, it was a rare occasion when somebody pointed out Donna Summer was from Boston. but we knew it because if you watch that documentary, Donna Summer, Love to Love You, it has actual footage of black folks in Boston celebrating her and dancing to her music because we existed. That was the reason why, because people didn't even think that black music in Boston was synonymous.
You said everything I wanted to hear. I mean, from an outsider looking in, you often wonder why did it take so long for them to, for them to be recognized. Now, I don't want to say was it a lack of talent, because clearly there was talent there.
Oh,
Edo probably, would you say, was he the first that, not the first to do it, but the first to really make people recognize?
Kind of put that footprint in.
Also cross over into the rest of the country,
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, he wasn't the first to do it, but he was the first for people like you and me to be like,
yeah,
wow.
How did he get signed? Because he came out of nowhere with a great song that you first saw on Yo MTV Raps if you weren't living in Boston. So how did that even occur?
So Edo G was part of and also in terms of Boston talent, people would come from New York and LA regularly to the Hollywood talent night we had thrown by Roscoe Gorman, who ran Roscoe's Lounge, and also Maury Starr. And basically in Boston, especially Roxbury, Dorchester, the talent show circuit was like high school football in Texas.
Yeah.
Because people were that rabid about it. And we were that good at it. People would come from LA, from New York, from Philadelphia, come down and poach our talent. Also, you have to remember that we have Berklee College of Music. We have the two conservatories, the Boston Conservatory, the New England Conservatory of Music. We had all these different music schools, and we had what was the Jazz Corner. So Boston was a jazz mecca. So if you wanted it was to the point where when Miles Davis needed a band, he came to Boston. He got Chick Corea, he got Tony Williams on drums, and he came here to play his shit and have people tell him what was good or what wasn't, and he was in Harlem. So there was always musical talent in Boston. Now, in terms of with rap, where did Edo G come from? When I talked about Lecco's Lemma and also later WHRB, the guys at Harvard, Dave Mays, John Schechter, they see what's going on at Lecco's Lemma. They have to leave MIT and they end up going to Boston College, WZBC in 86. And so they're like, yo, we need to have a radio show at Harvard. So in 87, they start Street Beat, named after, Lady B's radio show in Philly. But Edo G came out of the crew of people that used to always visit, MIT and WZBC. I'm talking about back in 86. He was in a group called FTI Fresh and Press Crew. And he was just a beatboxer. He was Ed Rock back then. And then later on, they let him start rapping. And when he's 16, 17, he leaves FTI crew and he starts another crew called 3 Def Notes. And by that time, he's hanging around with the guys at Harvard, at the Street Beat show. And they start managing him with 3 Def Notes. And then when 3 Def Notes dissolves, his cousins are in New Jersey. So we're talking about Special K and Teddy Ted, the Awesome Two.
Yeah.
So he starts sending them demos. And after a while, they're like, yo, we starting to get good.
Are we rolling?
You ready? Yeah! Oh, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go!
I'm not like anyone else, so don't you think about make suggestions. He rap like so-and-so, hey yo, that's out of the question. Plus it don't sound right, cause I don't sound like him. Or try to G like, C like, or even be like them. Or anyone else, I'm going for self. You open your mouth and then I'll stuff you. You're like a floor walked on, waxed, and then I'll buff you. Plus you think you're tough too? With your garbage style, rubbish, nothing but trash. You wanna try me? Come on, I got some shit for your ass. I'll never be weak. Doze off, go to sleep or get tired. Put wings on your head so it's easier to fly it. Off you go, blow, off the block. Get funky on you suckers like a gym sweat sock. Cause I tear up to inflict. Pick your hair up like a pick. Edo G, yeah, it's me, I'll make Madison sick. I'm never taking a loss, but beating them down with force. Robo Day writes the source. I got more holes than a golf course. Here's a lyrical lesson, so you losers will learn. Whack raps are like we gym hats. Get break and get burned. So I dare you to compare me to a soft-hearted sucker. I'm different, so don't compare me to another.
So when they send them a demo that they really like, they alert A&R at Polygram, PWL Records, a guy Brian Chin, who was the guy who signed I believe
Rob Bass.
Rob Bass and Easy
Rob
Rock.
Bass and DJ Easy Rock. He signed Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock over at the record label. They were at Creativity. Brian Chin, that guy. And he also wrote for Billboard, right? Dance tracks. And then later on, another guy, Bill Coleman takes it over and does the dance report. But he signs Ed when he hears the demo to PWL Polygram. It later becomes Chemistry Records. And then they start putting together the album. And with him, he has a young guy by the name of, he's from Lawrence Scientific. He had a different name at the time. So he's with him throughout these whole sessions. K-Def, a young K-Def is also there with Special K and Teddy Ted. You have Joe Mansfield. So everybody's recording that album. And when that album drops, it has the single, I Gotta Have It, which ends up becoming, a classic and ends up hitting number one. On the rap charts in May 1991. So that ends up becoming the song. He's the guy who says everything about Roxbury. The Bulldogs, Roxbury, and Boston is what I represent. He talks about Boston's Adidas culture. He has everybody talking about Black Boston because they're reciting the lyrics. Whereas the first guy to really do it is really, Keith the E from Gangstar. But by the time Gangstar really blows up after they leave Wild Pitch and sign with EMI Chrysalis, nobody knows they're from Boston. They know them as a Brooklyn rap group, But they toiled on K-Tel Wild Pitch between 1987 and 1989, before all the members except for Keith said, this shit ain't working, we're going back to Boston.
Have you ever heard a jam that goes
something like this? Something like this. Something like this.
So while Gangstar was on Wild Pitch and he added DJ Premier, Gangstar Posse was back in Boston recording and making records. They had a video on BET, Read the Label, So if you go on YouTube and watch a Gangstar Posse Read the Label, you'll be like, wait a minute. What's going on here? And after they signed with EMI, they sent a cease and desist letter to them in Boston and were like, y'all can't be Gangstar Posse anymore. So they had to become Posse NFX. And they released this album, Black or Your White, 1991. So, there's a whole lot going on in Boston. There was a whole lot of talent. And what happened was when New Edition and Bobby Brown and New Kids on the Block all blew up between 1988 and 1989, everybody descended upon Boston and signed everybody. But I'll say that, of all the people that got signed, nobody made it probably except for Ed.
Well, let me ask you this question. You can't speak for Ed, but and you said 91, because I do remember that album was 91, right?
Yes.
We could agree. All right. 91, 91, 91, he drops the album. Great album. And then 91, you have Marky Mark, who's from Boston, get all the notoriety of this new artist from Boston. I gotta imagine someone like Ed, who knows he has a great album, who it's resonating with people like yourself and people like myself, who's not even from Boston, but yet he's not getting the push, he's not getting the attention, he's not getting any of that. And from a lyrical standpoint, he shouldn't even be in the same conversation. What does that do? Does that cause that resentment? Because, like you said, people maybe not think of Black music when you think Boston. And at a time like this where you have, who I think is probably one of the most important voices in hip-hop from Boston, Ed O, is kind of like taking a back seat to this guy, Marky Mark, whose brother's from New Kids on the Block.
So here's the thing about that. I need to explain something, first off, that everybody doesn't know, or if they looked at a map, they should know. Boston is the size of Shaq's left shoe. So when we talk about 6 degrees of separation, we think of New York. In Boston, it's 1.5 to 2 at most. So let's say that when Odin got killed by the dude from the Patriots, that wasn't some random motherfucker. That was somebody we knew. He was related to somebody. We knew him. He was somebody's family. If something happens in Boston, everybody's affected because everybody knows everybody. Or it's not too far to touch somebody. Like, if I told you who I'd be DMing back and forth that you think is super famous, that's so-and-so from back then. Like, I've been on that motherfucker, right? Because Boston's not that big. So when you think of something like, an outsider will think that Ed OG's completely pissed off that, Marky Mark, and the Funky Bunch. Everybody knows, I know Mike Quan, I know all the dudes in the Funky Bunch. And the other thing is that who wrote the rhymes? Do you think Mark wrote Good Vibrations? Do
No.
you think he produced it?
No,
It was
no.
written by a Boston legend named MC Spice, the first Boston rapper to be signed to a major.
Bust this, homeboys. I'm getting sick and tired of y'all treating your girl so bad. You just can't do that to the one you love.
This is straight up. He was the first rapper signed to Atlantic Records. He had a single called "Don't Treat Your Girlie Like a Dog, Dog, Dog Get Tanked." And people forgot about him because the next rapper that label signed was a young girl from Brooklyn named Lana Mora, who released a single called "I Crammed to Understand You, Sam," that blew up, and everybody forgot MC Spice existed and he got dropped. But MC Spice was like the A&R of the hood. So he worked with everybody coming up, helping them develop stuff. So there were always black folks behind the scenes developing the talent. If you're looking at New Kids on the Block, you had writers like Travis Gresham. You had Michael Johnson. You had different people behind them doing the marketing and all this other stuff. So the image is that these white guys came out of nowhere and took off everything. New Kids on the Block started out performing in the very same talent show venues that every Black and Latino Boston, Massachusetts performer performed in. Everybody knows everybody. So, but the unfortunate part is that Mark signed to Interscope early. All they had was Gerardo, and then they signed Tupac, right? Like, quite literally, like, they didn't have anything moving. So when the Funky Bunch signs, he puts out, Feel the Vibration, which was written to be a crossover hit. I heard this shit early. My sister was in, my brother was in, his girlfriend was in a group called Not Your Average Girls. They were supposed to sign the deal that TLC signed. But their manager turned it down because he said they ain't got shit going on at LaFace. Like, straight up. He had power of attorney, and he turned down the meeting, and TLC gets the meeting through Pepitone, and they blow up. And they're like watching them blow up on TV, looking at their manager like, you asshole. But I heard Feel the Vibration early. Feel good vibrations, Lolita Holloway singing. And I was like, this sucks. I'll battle up Mark right now. Like, I'll take Jesus off his feet. And everybody's laughing, and they're looking at me like, man, will you shut up? This is about to be a hit. This is what we need. And he also wrote Wild Side, which also ended up being a hit. So the thing is that the unfortunate part of it is that MC Hammer should have been the first artist to hit #1 on the Billboard charts, but he was hamstrung by Capitol Records, who said, we don't want to put out more formats of the single because people buy the single and not the album. We want them, if they want the song, we need them to buy the album. It ends up working and ends up fucking up because SBK Records sees that, and they put out Ice Ice Baby on single, on CD single, on 7-inch, on 12-inch vinyl, and they put it out on single, maxi single, every format imaginable. It ends up hitting #1. And the same thing happened with Good Vibrations. Interscope followed that same model, and it became the second rap song to hit #1 on the Billboard charts. But if you go back and look at the rap charts, you'll realize that Good Vibrations never shows up on the rap charts as it's ascending to the Hot 100.
It's funny. I'm kind of listening to the whole arc. You must feel, being a part of the inner fabric of Boston, that anyone who really had a chance to get out, be it Guru, be it Ed, it seems like they went almost to like a New York kind of format, and they got perfected. And it almost makes it like Boston got left in the dust and really did not get the credit. But yet you guys know the very early on scenarios that got them to where they're at. So again, this is kind of like Boston's MO, whether it's in sports, before they started winning major championships, minus the Celtics. The people that were coming out, they were really almost turning their backs because they wanted success to not be established in Boston, but yet they really are nothing but local Boston folk.
It sounds that way, but the truth is that the way things were structured made it so that had to happen. It wasn't that they wanted to do it. It was out of necessity. Donna Summer had to go to New York to reach her goals as a singer. Guru and Gangstar Posse had to leave Boston and go to New York and sign with K-Tel, Wild Pitch, and be in New York in order to make it happen.
Just like Common.
Yeah. So, like, when you think about, like, Ed OG was in Boston, but he had to go through the Awesome Two, who were staples in New Jersey and New York, in order to get that deal, you know? And if you weren't with, and the other people in Boston who had like connections to major record labels were, I don't know if you ever heard the song, I know artists who got screwed by Maurice Starr and Larry Wu. So if you were Maurice Starr, you had an in at different record labels. If you were Larry Wu Wedgeworth or Gordon Mecca Bucksworthy, you had ins at different record labels. So everybody in Boston knew these are the people you go to get on, you know? And you ended up in a situation where, sure, you're going to get on, but at what cost? Because what ends up happening is there's a laundry list of Boston acts, R&B, soul, rap, who don't get further. And like, we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of there was a time when you had Ed OG and the Bulldogs coming back out with their second album. You have Juice for Soul. Juice for Soul was signed to Atlantic. They didn't even get a video on their album, Body Armor, Juice for Soul. You have Joint Venture, who were signed by Funkmaster Flex to Profile Records. The album dropped November 30th, 1993. It's the Joint was the single. They put out the single, they don't get a second single. Fly Tie gets killed February 94. That's over for them, right? Almighty RSO gets signed to Tommy Boy. They get dropped after the Killer controversy. They get back on Epic Records through Flavor Unit, through Queen Latifah. They have the Bad Boy single. Things end up going south for them. So they end up putting out the Revenge of the Bad Boys EP on RCA. Things go south for them. So they end up on like Rap-A-Lot. Things go south. They're about to sign with Eazy-E. Things go south. And it started off with, you know, them after being signed to Tommy Boy, they were going to go work with Paul C. Paul C gets killed while they're working with him.
Oh, damn.
So like, it's always this Boston story of almost there, didn't make it. Like, there was a time we had several acts signed. We had Top Choice Click was signed to A&M. You had Ruffa signed to MCA. You had we had just had so many groups signed. Here and Now were signed to Third Stone Atlantic. And you can't find a Here and Now video on YouTube. Like, I would have to find Wyatt Jackson and be like, do you have a copy? You need to upload that shit to YouTube. So it's always a Boston story of, we had all these acts, we're going to these record release parties, everybody got deals, you know, everybody's talking about this and this and this, and then nothing happens. Tam gets signed, she got co-signs by Bobby Brown and everything. They try to give her the head mic and the spandex and have her do the hammer route. Shit doesn't work out. It's like, that's the Boston story. We always get obscured and things always fall through. But when Boston becomes an underground rap mecca between 96 and like 98, that's when things really started happening, because we became known internationally for having a diverse group of MCs that would just destroy any stage.
I was going to say the emergence of first of all, the independent movement really helped a lot of regions.
Oh,
like Toronto, Philly, Boston. I mean, you had Lift, Acrobatic, you had 7L, SO, Crumb Snatcher, L the Head Toucher. I'm just going off the top of my head. You had a lot of people. You had groups, you had labels like Brick, Our Boy Papa D, Detonator, Land Speed Distribution. Yes. So it became a household name in the hip hop industry, and especially in the independent underground movement. That's when people started taking notice. A lot of our listeners probably like, oh yeah, that's when I found out about Mr. Lift and the Rebel Alliance and all that. Concrete Click, all those cats.
Yes.
So
yeah.
No,
that was a great time.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Now that we're kind of like in the late 90s, this was a crucial movement in hip hop, not just in Boston, but I think really helped establish that Boston sound that we were missing for years prior.
I think one of the key things was that the internet was in its infancy. And also Boston has always been, people call it a college town. Boston is home to 50 different colleges, universities, institutions of higher learning. And thank God for high-speed internet, T1 lines, what have you. But also what happens is people come from all over the place and bring their music with them and their influence with them. And Boston was always around the radio shows and the radio stations. So we had a whole bunch of like really great local rap radio at the college level. And then also what happens is you had all these rabid rap fans. So this is where the underground hip hop store starts, ughh.com, you know, and we used to frequent that. But also I used to work at a place, Tower Records, at the corner of Mass Ave and Newberry. And directly across the street, we had this record store called Biscuit Head, and which also became a record label. That's where you first hear Edan, his first singles, the E's Have It, Sing It, Shit Face, and also Porn Theater Ushers. Me and Him and Imagination, Catnip.
Yeah.
So they put that out, and it was just an explosion. You would see Acrobatic, you see 7L, you see Fax One. I'm hiding records from Edan, and I don't know who he is until my boy introduces me to him. And this is an amazing time because I'll just be chilling and somebody comes to me with a mini disc player. And he'd be like, yo, I want you to hear something. And he'd be playing something for me. He's like, there's this kid that goes to BU. He calls himself Aesop Rock. This is his demo. Or someone will come up to me and they'd be like, yo, I want you to hear something. This dude named Smitty, a producer, his production company is called WATER Water. His name is Smitty, but he also calls himself Steve Boston. And he's playing me something. And I'm like, yo, is this Thurston Howell III? You're like, yeah, I produced for him. This is on his demo that he sent to the source. So everything is happening right now. Everything. You would just be chilling and it's like, you would see Sage Francis come in and hand you a flyer. Everything was happening at that time. And also where I worked, it was right on Berkeley College of Music's campus, and everybody came down there because we had a Daddy's Junkies Music and an EU Wurlitzer directly across the street. And people used to buy their stuff, their equipment from there, and they used to go back and forth and haggle over. They said that it's going to be $50 less. So they would try to fight to get the sale. And you would also, there were a whole bunch of record stores. You had a record store down the street. You had Nuggets, but you also had Looney Tunes. Then you had another record store right down the street, which got shut down because somebody went in there and asked for Dave Matthews Band, bootlegs, and they had them, and they got hit with a cease and desist, and they shut the spot down. We had so many different record stores and places where people could congregate, and all the rap shows were happening over the bridge. So they were happening to Western Front, the Middle East, Bill's Bar, and then that's back when the Static Selector was still spinning on Lansdowne Street, when you had a whole bunch of rap venues and stuff like that. So it was an explosion. Boston was an underground hip-hop mecca in the late 90s going into the early zeros.
I feel like there was a huge thirst for that was kind of my sweet spot time period doing college radio in the late 90s, early 2000s, and there was a big thirst for that certain underground sound, and a lot of it was coming out of Boston, and people were seeking it out, and it was kind of like the cool kid thing. If you knew about it, if you know.
A lot of it was fueled by a couple of compilations that happened. Of course, Stretch Armstrong, yeah, that too. But Stretch Armstrong at Dolo Records, he put out, the Lessons Part 1 and 2. He had a significant amount of, Boston, Mass area records on there.
Yo, it's Armageddon, brothers dropping like flies. Revolutionary sharpening knives. More supplies than a carpenter buys. I can see him like a cop in the skies. Fierce warrior, hip hop in his eyes. Dropping provocative lines, images locking the mind at different stages. Intrigues my book of life, so turn the pages. Long as God is gracious, my destiny is infinite, although the body ages. A rapper's work is never done. Competitors better run. Me and the mic become in sync link and think like one. Altering your tunnel vision, my aura shines purer. Aggressively, my method be something you ain't sure of. Lyrical explorer, summons rappers like a court order. My short slaughters, sort of ridiculous. The way the L be kicking is, who the wickedest by far. Poetical star, sure to slaughter your design. This mass cast divine, force and energy combined. When my words intertwine, keeping MCs and amateurs losing their minds when I shine. We fool for the mentally blind. For the mentally blind.
And then also DJ Premier, who, worked with a whole bunch of people from the region, let's not forget, and was tapped in through Guru, who people forget, was still coming back and forth. He didn't abandon Boston. He came home all the time. You know what I'm saying? People have this misconception that, he just left Boston in the rear view. He had Big Suge with him. You know what I'm saying? When Big Suge came home, everybody was like, yo, you need to get back up with Suge. He in the 1994 issue of The Source, he tells the entire story of him being from Boston. He tells the story on the Song of the Planet. So people have this image that, he abandoned Boston. I'm like, nah, motherfucker, we saw him all the time. If you went to Dudley Square, if you went to Dorchester, if you went to Grove Hall, something like that, you see Almighty RSO. You're going to see Guru. Like, in the I Got the Habit video, it's Guru doing the dance, So, like, a lot of people get shit misconstrued. But it was a great time for, like, Massachusetts rap because of these different compilations. That Hip Hop 101 joint that he did with Hayes, put a whole bunch of, like, Massachusetts. And then there were other compilations that came out.
Like Commonwealth?
Yes.
Commonwealth, yeah.
The Commonwealth Records one, Grit Records put out one. There was the Land Speed joints. There was the Detonator joint. And but you got to keep in mind that the reason why that happens is because a lot of people were leaving where they were from and came to Boston. High and Mighty were at Boston University from Philly. They were part of our scene. You had, like, you think of, like, Breeze Ever Flowing, Sea Ray's Walls. You think of Poison Pen. They were in Boston, and they were Stronghold. That's Stronghold crew. They were down with Detonator Records. So they're running around with Acrobatic and Lip. And also we had a dude named Chan. He was Snacky Chan, but he was Chan. Politicking with Chan and Big in Japan. He released those in Boston. I was hanging out with him and Verbal from M-Flow when he was going to seminary school in Boston. This around the same time that I think fucking the dude who did Gangnam Style was going to Berklee College of Music. So there was all this stuff happening in Boston, and if you were not here, you have no clue what was going on. But there were so many people from everywhere who constantly came down to Boston, because if you were rapping and you were underground, you did shows. One time I remember I was hanging out and I heard this voice, this deep ass gravelly voice, and I look over and it's Lord Have Mercy. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in Boston? And it turns out that, like, after the Ungodly Hour didn't come out and got dropped, he started his entertainment company, Sword and Shield, and he spent time, down there. Everybody had their Boston stint. Doom had his, but he got arrested for, like, he got arrested because, they thought he was somebody else. So his time, he released a EP with Grimm, on Brick Records, No Snakes Alive is on there,
The Doomsday EP, right?
No. It was the Doom Grim EP.
No, and it was on Brick. It had like a double folded record. Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that he's not wearing a mask. They're just playing chess. It's him and Grim just playing chess. This is before the mask. So yeah, it's crazy.
Let's talk just really quick about Guru, because you mentioned Guru, how he never left Boston. What was it like for you guys to see Guru in what was his final year, with him and Solar? And clearly he wasn't the same Guru that I think a lot of people knew. And I say that not to be presumptuous, but I interviewed him when he dropped the last album, Solar, and it was actually one of the last interviews he recorded before he passed. And he was not the same guy that I remember. And I met Guru a few times, and he was gracious. He was affable. He was humble. He was everything you wanted someone who you looked up to be. But he wasn't that in his final year with Solar. What can you talk about that? I mean, how did that affect you? Can you shed any light on what transpired?
So I'll say this about Guru, right? I think it's important to, like, get the full totality of the image and the message and what happened in the timeline, right? First off, right? I already talked about how when Gangstar came out and, they're coming out, they're making records about Brooklyn, we feel like, oh shit. Like, oh, he acting he says, peace to Boston. All the East Coast cities are fly to me. But Brooklyn, making songs, Brooklyn, the place where we dwell, Brooklyn, the planet, and it just felt like, damn, like, it feels like he forgot about us. But, when Big Suge gets down there with them, they start doing stuff, it changes because, he always came home. He has family here, right? He always came home. And the feeling started to change right after, I'd say, so Hard to Earn, right? because he's putting Suge on records. Suge starts putting out stuff like Crush later. He starts reaching out to people from the region. Cats know Premier when he comes down. So between like 94, 95, 96, things start changing, right? And by the time we get to, there was a big space between albums too, because they leave their label, they're on a new tribe, what have you. So, and then he's doing all the Jazzmatazz stuff too. And Premier is an in-demand producer. So there's this big gap between maybe like 94 and 97 where people don't know what's going on. But he's still in contact with people from Boston. He's still coming back and forth. And, he's saying stuff on the record that, I'm from Boston, I'm from Roxbury, I was in Grove Hall in Dorchester, I started out on, Lecco's Lemma in 86, So these things start coming down. But then what happens is he has this homecoming. And this is important that everybody needs to know. The Moment of Truth album was the return, was the homecoming. It's when, and also there's this skit on there where DJ Suge is explaining to somebody that he didn't abandon Boston. I think people forget that, right? But when he comes home to Boston, this is right before I started working at Tower Records. Boston Tower Records used to have a stars, right? A Walk of Fame on the sidewalk on Newberry Street. And Guru and Gangstar were going to get their star on the Boston Walk of Fame in 1998 when they came back to do their in-store for Moment of Truth. And that was a huge moment for him. He had everybody with him. Big Suge was there. Crumb Snatcher was there. The original Gangstar Posse members were there. Like, everybody was there. And it was like a homecoming for him, right? And then he does Bullhead Slick and the Click, which was on, Land Speed Records, He starts working with different people, the Crumb Snatcher and all the other cats from Lawrence, the Wolves, all them cats, right? He starts working with all of them. And all that shit starts to change. So now he does, if you listen to this, there's a song called Home. Guru's doing the hook. Gotta get home. Gotta get there. So all these feelings about Guru that we had in the past about maybe he abandoned us in Boston like that shit's gone. Now, Gangstar has their run and everything else. And also DJ Premier was also very clear on explaining to people the foundation. There's the Gangstar Foundation, and then where Gangstar started, in Boston, and his role in it. And rest in peace to DJ Mark the 45 King. But what I'm getting to is that after the Gangstar run kind of dies down and they kind of have their split or whatever, it's really awkward. We don't know what the fuck is going on when he starts getting with super producer Solar, okay? So the end of his life and all the other shit, I was in the dark about all of that. If you were on Twitter, you remember when I heard, and also again, goes back to Boston being the size of Shaq's left shoe. It gets to one person, it's to the next person, it's everywhere. It's across the city. So when I heard from his sister that he was like in hospice care and on the verge of death, I'm like, how did you get this information? We find out, I read it on this, I saw it here, but she's there. And his nephew's like, what the fuck is going on? And it's spreading. I'm getting information first, third, fourth, and third, then second hand about what's happening. I'm removed from what's going on, but then people are talking to like everybody who was around Solar and all the other shit. So we're hearing stuff from like, who's the DJ who did the mixtapes, Doo-Wop, and all these other folks, because Premier hasn't been in contact with them. So all that stuff that happened with Solar, I either heard secondhand or after the fact. I was getting all this information late because I hadn't, been up on what Guru was doing. I'll tell you what I did. I reviewed one of his albums that Solar produced, and I said it was absolute fucking trash.
Solar, Big Guru, 7 grand, baby. People always want to live in the past. Those days are gone. I grew up fast and to hold my hand, understand? I'm a grown man. Watch me do it like a pro, The niggas niggas used to run from us like king. Young little hoodlums doing like we do. Who's my next victim, kid? Most likely you. You all upset and shit and wanna fight me too. The industry is like the opposite of culture. And my style's like poisonous flesh to you vultures. I came through just to insult you. Homie, you're phony. Your gravestone, I'll sculpture.
And that is still up on the website for anybody. And people just like, yo, Joe, you really went in on that shit. I was like, Guru makes better beats than this. He produced for Bahamadia. You know what I'm saying? He produced Gangstar records with Premier. You know what I'm saying? Like, he produced Jazzmatazz records. He produced records with fucking Solar, like with the actual Solar, from France. Whoever the fuck this dude is. And like, I just shit on that record. The Scriptures, 0.7, whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
Like, I shit all over that record. And people were like, damn, Dark. I was like, I had to do it because it's that bad. And he's better than this. And then he had that song, I'm Saying, with this really weird hook. It was like offbeat. I'm like, why is Guru rapping over this? Why is he fucking with this dude? Why is he calling him a super producer? He's trash. No one else wants to work with him but you. So when he finally was sick and infirm to the end of his life and he passed away, I was out of the loop entirely. But what I did was my thing of grief was to recount the history of Boston rap and Gangstar and everything else, because a lot of people were saying shit and didn't know what they were talking about because they don't live here, they never lived it, and they don't know shit about it. They're talking from like hundreds of miles away. I was here, I lived this shit. I was a kid listening to when Gangstar first rolled up to Lecco's Limo and he played Fresh Avenue. I was listening in 86. You know what I'm saying? I was listening to The Lesson in 87 when they were on K-Tel Wild Pitch. Like, I was rooting for them back then. When they got off of Wild Pitch, he got on EMI thanks to Spike Lee and Jazz Thing. I was cheering my ass off, But at the end of his life, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I was hearing stories second and third hand after the fact. So I was removed from I'll say a lot of it was rumors. And if you were around on Twitter and getting the DMs and getting the texts, you heard all the stories. And I don't want to get into detail about what they were about and what happened. But there was a lot of fuck Solar, and Solar's still alive. I don't know where he is, but he's still alive. So I'll just end it with, we were taken aback and I was just blindsided by what happened at the end of his life. But in Boston, what we were going to do before he died, we were going to have the Hip Hop Unity Fest. And he was going to be coming back as the guest of honor. But he died. So what we did was we extended an invitation to, and this is crazy I say this, Jay Electronica. And Jay Electronica became the headliner for the Hip Hop Unity Fest that year. And everybody came down. All the people that were down with Gangstar, everybody in Boston rap, everybody was there. J-Wu the Damager came down and was performing. And they were trying to get him off the stage so Jay Electronica performed. And Jay Electronica came on stage, took the mic and said, "You got all the time you need. He was our brother." And the whole crowd fucking exploded. So we've celebrated his life after he passed away. I've done a whole bunch of stuff with like members of the group. I did this thing you can find on YouTube with his sister, his nephew, and Big Shug and Ed OG for Artdacity. So I'm just gonna say that, like, I can't speak to what was going on with Guru at the end because I wasn't there, and even the stuff that I heard, I don't want to repeat. But I will say that he passed away, and he's going to be remembered as a son of Roxbury, a son of Dorchester, and one of the most important cogs in Boston rap and Boston music history. His parents passed. Parents. If you go to the Embrace statue, you will see the names of his parents engraved in the ground at the Embrace statue, to give you an idea what the Elams mean to Boston and Massachusetts. So he's one of them. We're gonna get some streets named after him. We need a fucking statue. That's how I'm gonna end it when I'm talking about Guru, Keith Elam, Keith E, the MC.
Anytime we hear anything about Guru, I always feel like it's like an honor to be told stories how it actually happened. Could also be wishful thinking of just having somebody like that back in the hip hop game, you know, how it would continue to elevate and change the landscape of things. So I appreciate that story for sure. And also want to go into your opinion about major labels not really congregating towards Boston acts. Any thoughts behind that?
Major labels were signing Boston acts.
Yeah.
Multiple Boston acts. Like we were going to a record release, a record signing party, like every month, you know. But we have the record release party, you know, every so often. But where's the video?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the support? Boston acts used to just get signed to record labels and then just didn't shit happen. Like we have a history of, I signed to a major, here's my album, I don't remember your video. Or you got one video. Like, it's the Boston story. So the independent route was great because people were picking and choosing. And then also the big part is that with a major label, they pick your single and they pick the B-side, or if there is even a B-side. With independents, let's put these 4 songs on vinyl. Side A, side B. People pick what's the hot song. And then with the internet, people determine what's the hot song, what we put on the mixtape, what we put in the mix, what we can make a video for, because we're going to make a video for low money anyway. It's not going to be on Rap City because they're not going to play the shit. But it's going to be on local, you know, cable access. You can put it on a VHS tape, later put it on DVD, you know. So the internet really opened up everything in terms of like Boston rap. And also internationally, it had a huge audience. We had people coming to Berklee College of Music because their favorite rapper or producer was from Boston and Massachusetts. That's the type of shit that blew my mind. Kids from Japan, kids from England, you know, kids from France, Germany, you know, were coming to Boston because their favorite rap group or their favorite singer or whatever was from here. Not even so much that, oh, I need to go to Berklee College of Music. I need to be in Boston. That is mind-blowing to me. And when, like, I pick up old magazines, I have a magazine, and it calls it Boogie Down Boston. It's from Australia. And it has an entire thing. It's 7L esoteric, it's acrobatic, it's lift, you know, it's talking to this dude who did an entire documentary about the Boston underground rap scene, you know. So like it was so big. Like even when you look at stuff like what LP was doing, right? Boston was a huge part of what LP was doing to the point where do you remember when I'll never forget this, when Demigods was beefing with
Cage.
Yeah, beefing with Weatherman.
Yep.
In New England and in Boston, it was like watching your cousins fight. Hated it. It was like all your favorite rap groups and all your people that you see all the time, always at the Middle East, always at the Western Front, always at Bill's Bar, beefing. And that was what like the Boston rap scene was like, especially on the underground, because a lot of people came here and cut their teeth here, and they were from elsewhere, you know? And they had like an affinity for being here. And it was a big deal when they showed up. Like, I knew everybody from Detroit because I felt kinship with the folks from Detroit, because Detroit and Boston are the only places where, like, the things we valued the most was underground rap and Adidas, you know? So, like, we always felt this affinity for each other. And whenever Detroit acts came to Boston, they would be in shock that we knew them chapter and verse, you know? It's like, how the hell do you know this? Like, Federation Records. Like, how the fuck you get Federation Records? It's like, no, we get everything here. So that's another thing about Boston, too, that I need to, like, make people understand. The reason why Boston was open to music from everywhere is because we never got love from New York. We had the same thing, and we had this kinship with Philadelphia, because Philadelphia always felt like New York doesn't recognize us for what we have and what we do for them and what we've done for the scene. Like, Philadelphia had all the best DJs, right? Philadelphia did so much for New York. Like, that's why dude said, we know where you got your start, right here in Philly on pop art, you know?
Yep.
Like, So we always had this feeling where like New York didn't recognize us. So if you came from elsewhere, and also Boston is a transit city where people come from everywhere, whether they go to school here, go to work here, they bring their kids, what have you, or if your kids are doing bad wherever they are, they sent them to Boston. There's a sign in Safe Sex No Freaks. There's a line: "Killing is your everyday plan, so you're out to New York and you aren't to Boston." We got everybody. So they brought their tapes with them. They brought their music. If you came from Miami, we heard your music. We're listening to fucking, Don't Sleep on a Hizzo. If you came from Memphis, we're listening to the 666 Mafia, not the 3-6 Mafia, DJ Paul tapes, Prophet Posse tapes. We're hearing all the kids who came from Michigan and Detroit playing Esham, Booming Words from Hell. We got all the kids from California who moved down. We're listening to San Quinn. We're listening to Mr. Lunatic. We're listening to Crips and Bloods. And also, thanks to the Great Migration, most of our parents are from the South. Our family from the South. So a lot of us go down south or go somewhere else and then come back home. Rap-A-Lot Records was really big in Boston. If you were on Rap-A-Lot Records and you made an album, we heard it. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the fucking Black Monks. I don't care if you're the Convicts. I don't care if you're Willie D. Like, if you released the album, we had it.
What was Scarface's little son's name on Egan?
Tulo, the
Tulo
brother.
You fucked with that You fucked with that Tulo album?
People fucked with the Tulo album where I live, yes, because I wasn't sure if Tulo was a kid or if he was an adult acting like a kid. Also, you had Too Much Trouble, the baby ghetto boys.
Who was the one of my favorites was I Know How to Play Him.
Oh, so
OG Style.
Thank you for bringing up OG Style. OG Style is from Dallas, Texas. Do you know what the #1 song on Boston radio for the longest time was? I Know How to Play Him. Yeah,
Boy.
I know how to catch him slipping. Because Boston radio played that shit to death. Because I didn't know they were from Dallas. But OG Styles' album was everywhere when it came out.
It was
and
dope.
like I tell people that story and they're like, what? See, that's the beauty of Boston, man. We listen to everything. If you brought a tape in, we would say, play that shit. Because we know in New York, they were like, if you said something was from Boston, they might thumb their nose at it. So we had the opposite effect. This is why like Boston's culture is the way it is. They rock Air Force Ones and Nikes in New York. We rock Adidas. You do this, we do that. So we kind of had an anti-New York culture for the longest, and also because we felt like we were in their shadow, which is kind of dissipated in recent years, with, people getting entitled and having big heads because now kids have grown up. Now they see the Patriots struggling and they're like, I don't understand this. And I'm like, dude, the Patriots used to get fucking blacked out on TV. I said, used to have to hear them lose on the radio. You know what I'm saying? So like the Boston mentality has changed a lot, but like in terms of like, underground and the internet, it was very democratizing and it got our music out to everybody and also let everybody know that Boston and Massachusetts was a very diverse scene. We had everything from the street shit to the really backpackery, technical, what people consider nerd rap. But dude, like, I could tell you right now, the most street dude in the world would shoot somebody, sell some drugs, and be like, yo, you read that new Iron Man? So it was always this. Boston is equal parts Athens and Sparta. And I always try to explain that to people.
I think I'm going to cancel the other two guests and just talk to you for another hour because, I mean, let's do this. No, in all seriousness, let's do a quick lightning round of like true or false because I want to, you said it all. By the way, Too Low was the Fifth Ward's version of Shaheem, if you didn't know.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, true or false? Benzino was behind the Paul Pierce stabbing.
Quick round.
Ray Dog was involved in the incident in the periphery.
Ray Lewis.
Ray Dog. I don't call him Benzino. I'm old dude. I'm an old dude from Boston. That's Ray. All right. So next question.
Ray Dog. By the way, when you were talking about RSO, you said everything was going down south, which I immediately thought of the source. Like everything that dude touches. True or false? Ray Dog got humbled by Freddie Fox in the Flavor Unit bus.
That happened. I actually told the story on All Hip Hop. So anybody who ever heard that story, I wrote about it on the Hip Hop back in 2005. So there it is.
True or false? For a hot second, you had to explain to people in your hood that House of Pain was not from Boston?
I never had to explain to people in Boston that House of Pain weren't from Boston because everybody from Boston knew House of Pain was from Boston. I had to explain to people on the internet since 2004 that House of Pain weren't from Boston.
Dart, who is your favorite underground Boston artist that a lot of people might not either have heard of or it's off the radar completely?
Holy shit. That is a hard question because there's a
top of your head.
John Cena.
Shit, no.
I'm going Insight.
I'll just say my brother's group Relentless. My brother's group Relentless and the Realm Organization, because they should have been huge and shit happened.
All right, real quick, since you have a great strong overview of Boston, what was your favorite hip hop moment coming out of Boston, start to finish?
Easy answer, easy clap. The answer is Ed OG and the Bulldogs. I Gotta Have It coming out and hitting #1 on the not only the Billboard rap singles charts, but also becoming an international hit. The low point is that when Ed OG and the Bulldogs had the biggest rap hit on the fucking planet, that even the fucking Wu-Tang Clan used to pull up and freestyle over, there's footage. There was no venue in Boston where he could perform it.
True or false, Mookie Wilson would have beat Bill Buckner to the bag anyway, even if he fielded that ground ball.
He would have beat Bill Buckner to the bag, but Stapleton should have been in the game, and he wouldn't have beat Stapleton to the bag.
Curveball. All right.
Calvin Schiraldi.
That's a good answer. That's a great way to wrap.
That is.
Dart can cover everything. Let me ask you, because we're wrapping it up now, but in my opinion, I happen to think Acrobatic is probably one of the best freestyle artists in, let's say, Boston. Is he up there for you?
Yeah, he's up there. That's my dude, by the way. Omega Supreme is also another dude that a lot of people don't know about. Professor Schumann was another dude who was insane, in terms of freestyling. There's a kid in Boston right now named Khalif, or as we call him, Leaf, L-I-P-H. He's fucking insane off the top of the dome. But in Boston rap, we have an insane amount of people that could just like freestyle. But like Acrobatic was really nice with it because he is a natural performer. Him and Liff were so dope that it was to the point where we had Governor Pete, aka Pistol Pete, who ran the promotions, and he would put on shows, and he'd be like, "I'll put Liff and Act on stage before anybody else. They'll fuck up the stage so bad that like you, the headliner, will just be performing like, damn, I gotta follow that kid." So to me, yes, indeed.
Great voices too, man. Acrobatic had the deep voice and Liff had the unique nasally voice. Great combo.
Great chemistry. I'm sorry to keep deviating. What happened to Scientific? That guy was so dope. Obviously his record came out many years after he passed away, but what happened to him? I don't even know how he passed away.
So Scientific, he pretty much like put out his record independently. As long as he was down with Ed OG. He had one of the early Prince Rakeem beats, that came out right after the Wu-Tang Clan came out.
As long as you know.
As long as you know.
Yeah, Diamond D on there.
Yep, Diamond D, who was a label mate with Ed OG and the Bulldogs on Mercury Records, Polygram, what have you. But what happened with him was that he put out his music independently. He didn't like the major label route. He didn't really like all the shit that entailed being an artist. He went back and forth with it. He had a tumultuous family life and stuff like that, and then he died under auspicious circumstances. And the incident under which he died is still up in the air as to exactly what happened that led to his death. And that's as best as I could tell you, because if you look at reports, they go back and forth on what happened and involved a car and an argument and a gun, and maybe that's not exactly what happened. So again, me being a journalist and somebody who like hates speculating on what could have happened, because then you start getting into the area of fucking gossip. He passed away under sad circumstances, and he could have been one of the greats. I was involved in a couple of articles about Scientific's life. One of them was in the Boston Dig. So you can actually find that one online, and it goes in depth in like what they found.
Real quick, who do you think would be your arch nemesis on knowledge in general with hip hop, not just Boston hip hop?
Well, there's me and Kevin Beecham. Me and Kevin Beecham go back and forth on stuff. In terms of like somebody I don't like, who I go back and forth.
Not necessarily arch nemesis in that respect. More who's going to be on your level and be able to play chess with you. Let's just say that.
Kevin Beecham is going to be Kevin Beecham. It's going to be Brian Coleman, who I go back and forth with all the time. It's going to be Pete Nice, who I have to ask for shit. And then like the other guy who I always have to like, did this actually happen? Dante Ross. A lot of people know who I am because I came up trying to clear up rumors that I heard. It turns out they were all wrong, all from MC Search. And that's how I met Dante Ross and Pete Nice in the first place. That's hilarious. Right?
That shit happens so easily. So
we can't go a single episode without somehow calling MC Search a fucking disruptor or just like, what the hell is this guy doing?
So many tall tales. So many.
That's past tense. Yeah, I think you can bring it to. Yeah,
he's still doing it.
He's still doing it.
He's what's that movie where the kid? He's Lawrence. He's Chunk from Goonies. He's like telling them fucking lies again, Lawrence.
Let me ask you about this guy. I think his name is Millies or whatever. Like,
yes. I've known Millies for a long time. Okay. I first met Millies like in 2007, 2008. Millies was really dealing in Cambridge, in the hood, went to sped classes. They were telling him he wasn't shit. But for some odd reason, he had this like affinity for words, and he rapped, and he, made a song called White Boy Like Me, and like he was just like, always performing, freestyling, just at all the showcases. And he would just make music. He made music. He kept grinding, and he became fucking successful at it. Millies is the same motherfucker now that he was back in 2010, 2011, 2012. I'll run into Millies and like he'd be on top of the world, and he'll come up to me and we'll start talking about the fucking Celtics. So Millies is my dude. I've been on a lot of podcasts where people were talking shit about Millies and I shut them the fuck down. It's recorded. I will send you links. So Millies is my dude. We go back, and I know from the outside, it's like, where did this guy come from, and his and how he looks and everything else. But he has the goods. He's tested. He's from here. He's one of us.
Is there anybody that you do not get along with that is a big representation of Boston?
If you're going to talk about who do I have some issues with, the last dude was what's his name? Joyner Lucas. Joyner Lucas came out his mouth and said some shit about the scene. And I didn't appreciate that because as a Bostonian, you don't bite the fucking hand to feed you, and you never take sides against the family. So he said some shit in public that shouldn't have been said in public. And also, I was one of the people that was around when you were begging to get shows and get seen and get recognized by the scene. And then once you did, you bounced because you got what you wanted, So that's one person. I feel like he's kind of corny in a sense, but he is who he is, and people look up to him. So if you want that answer, that's the answer I'll give.
I heard you have beef with Slain. True?
Slane's my boy. Let me tell you about something about Slane. Let me tell y'all something about Slane. Slane's dad was my fucking Latin teacher. Slane's dad used to come in and tell him stories about how his son was introducing him to rap, like songs like Automobile by NWA and Mr. Dabalina by Del the Funky Homo Sapien and all this other stuff. And I found out one day hanging out with Slane at UGHH. It's me, we're all chilling there, and he was talking about his dad, and this and that. I was like, Slane Carroll. Wait, what's your action? Is Dr. Carroll your father? Yeah, he was my Latin teacher. He used to tell me stories about you. So people are like laughing their ass off because I know Slane for years, back when he was John Doe, and I had no idea that I knew his father. So me and Slane every time Slane recorded a new album, because he used to do his albums at The Bridge, and Archetype at The Bridge was my boy, and I would come down and I'd be chilling while they recorded albums. So yeah, Slane's my dude.
All right, I stand corrected, but you do have beef with Rex, and I would like to get that resolved once and for all.
Rex is my dude too. Me and Rex are family. Everybody at Show Off and ST. Those guys been my family for like 20, 25 years. I'm talking Terminology. I'm talking Easy Money back when it was Ed Rock. I'm talking Rex. Everybody. Static. I knew Static. Static used to be my neighbor back in the late 90s. He used to live right down the street. So yeah, those are all my boys.
Right.
Again, Boston is the size of Shaq's left shoe. I know. We know. Everybody knows everybody. Me and 7L and Esoteric, like we go way back. Me and Mr. Jason, everybody.
Hey, whatever happened to Virtuoso?
Okay, I know that answer. Vert started a record label, and then he started getting into different shit. He started doing reggaeton records with Daddy Yankee.
Really?
And he started he moved to Puerto Rico for a minute. He was doing all this other shit, and then it just got to a point where he was just like, it doesn't make sense for me to be grinding and rap anymore. I got other shit I could be doing. So I really feel the last time I could say I ran into Vert was probably like 2014 or 2015. I haven't seen Vert since then. But yeah, that was my dude too for a hot minute.
Shit. Well, you've said it all. I mean, I really don't know where to begin because we don't need to interview the other two guys. I'm pretty sure Esso and John, we could tell them to kick rocks, but you
we'll talk about Tom Brady and Larry Bird with him.
You've covered everything. I can't thank you enough. This is the second time you're in the show. I think we need to have you one time, like where it's just you and we can just shoot the shit about all things hip hop. But I appreciate you stopping by and giving the listeners as well as ourselves a real in-depth look of what Boston hip hop was really like.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Appreciate it, Dart.
Thank you, guys.
All right, man. You have a good night.
You too, man.
Take care.
Thank you, guys. Yo, this is Dart Adams. When I'm not fact-checking people giving incorrect rap release dates, I'm listening to Take It Personal Radio.